everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Flora Magoria. I'm your host, Susie Bianco, your friendly neighborhood kitchen witch. And welcome to Composting 101. Welcome to my table of random crap. Alright, so when I say 101, that's because we're just going to go over the basics of cold composting as opposed to hot composting or composting with worms or any other kind of composting. Just your basic beginner's guide to get you started in the wonderful world of making your own fertilizer at home for random crap around your house. Not to be confused with the other episode we did of making liquid fertilizer from random crap around your house. This is more of a long-term thing. So let's go ahead and get started. Composting is surprisingly easy if you keep a few things in mind, namely what to compost and what not to compost, and then when you narrow down what you can compost, you need to remember greens versus browns. Now that is the amount of stuff that's going to turn into goop if it sits too long, greens, or the amount of stuff like these leaves that's going to just kind of break down and dry out, which are the browns. So, I went through a couple of unusual attempts at making my own composter. I'll show you one in a minute because it took me 10 minutes to get it set up and I don't want to move. But this is a basic store-bought one. It has 2 barrels. You can start 2. You can have one almost done, one started, so you never have to be throwing out your kitchen scraps. And the spinning part is actually very important because you want to come out and make sure that compost gets mixed up on a regular basis. It takes me a while to get my compost mixed because I tend to forget to come out and do that. But yeah, this is a pretty basic container. You can find barrels, you can make barrels. As long as they can move, you can keep adding to them. That's what you're looking for. This was my original attempt at a barrel, a compost barrel. It's an old garbage can, and I don't know if you can see it, but I cut a bunch of holes in the bottom to make sure there's aeration and to let out any extra liquid that builds up in there. And as you can see, I am lazy and I never threw anything out. This did have a lid on it, but it blew off. This didn't work. At all. I came out with a shovel, I turned it, it didn't do anything. But when I took the compost that had been in here for a year and a half and put it in a small cat litter container and left it on my porch for a year, magically it turned into compost. Same is true for an old ceramic flower container that I used to keep in my kitchen for my scraps before I take them all out to the compost bin. Turned into good compost. This doesn't work. There are other methods that you can use that I have not tried, but I've heard they have good results. That's when you dig a low pit just in the ground and you deposit your compost, your kitchen scraps and everything in the hole, and then you go out with a pitchfork, turn it every day, and oh, my feet are cold. I didn't wear shoes out there. That was stupid. And some people will cover it up with just a wooden pallet. Although, to be honest, a lot of people don't realize that used wooden pallets, tend to be used for a lot of shipping random things, and they could have all sorts of different substances in the wood. So if you plan on using that method, you want to make sure nothing leaches into your soil that you don't want. You definitely want to have control over everything that goes in there. So, that getting out of the way, do's and don'ts of containers, now we get to play a fun little game that I like to call, Can You Compost That? So we're going to start with an item. I'm going to hold it up, and then you're going to guess, can I compost that? Yes or no? So let's get started. I should be wearing a Bob Barker suit for this. So let's get started. Well, let's get started with the obvious. Eggs. Can I compost that? Well, there are several theories, schools of thought about this. You'll get 100 different answers from 100 different composters. Actually, no, you probably only get like 5 different answers if you ask 100 composters. But eggs, generally, yes, you can. Eggshells, most definitely, but you want to make sure that you grind them up real small. I can get this off. Because they do take a while to break down, and you'll have just big eggshells in your compost, which is fine. They will eventually break down, but it's easier if you just, and that goes for everything on this table that eventually gets a yes, that you can compost it. Everything, just make sure it's broken down, and we'll get into that, to the nuts and bolts of actually making compost. So anyway, eggshells, can I compost it? Survey says yes. Now, what about what's inside the eggshells? This is where it gets complicated. Personally, I say yes to the whites, no to the yolks. I feel that albumin, as it's mostly just, protein, is fine to compost. The yolk, as where it's the meaty part. I know people who know about the structure of eggs are looking at this like, what the hell, what are they talking about? But in my experience, yes to the whites, no to the yolks. Though I've heard other people who say yes to both, other people who say no to both. It's kind of up for debate. As well as a lot of things on here are up for debate, quite frankly. So, eggs. Alcohol wipes. No. No to isopropyl alcohol. Bad. It will kill off good bacteria in your compost. Very bad. The wipes themselves, it doesn't say what the wipes are made from, but I'm still going to say no. Even if you get all the alcohol, well, how can you be sure that you get all the alcohol off the wipes? Don't put these anywhere near your compost. Let's see. Dairy products, butter, cheese, milk. Big no. No on dairy products. Same with any type of meat. No on meat. No on dairy products. No on any animal byproducts whatsoever. It's just not a good idea. It will get rancid, and it will just be horrible, and you just, trust me, you don't want to deal with it. No, I'm not going to throw these, because, Let's see. Spinach. Big yes. Well, it used to be spinach. Let's see. Lettuces, spinaches, tomatoes, asparagus. All big yeses. These are going to be pretty much probably what the core of your compost is going to be made of. Basic kitchen scraps. All good. Fabric. That's a maybe. I'd say that's a maybe. If it's 100% cotton, then you're sure it's 100% cotton. It has no grease on it. It has no combustible anything on it. I would say yes, as long as you, like I said, chop it up into small pieces. Cotton's a naturally occurring substance. It has been treated, definitely, or hemp. Hemp, I would say also, yes. Most other things, no. But I don't know why you'd want to put them in your compost. Just, it's fine. I don't know. I would say more hemp than cotton. Definitely. It will break up better too. Anyway. Sugar. big old yes on sugar. You definitely, this is a good thing. Even if you're not composting sugar, you may want to just put some in there anyway. Uh, Anybody who has, gone through first aid training knows that if a body is out in the cold too long, not just me outside earlier, but if hypothermia starts to set in, eating candy can give an immediate rise to body temperature. The same is true in your compost. Put a little bit of sugar in, and it can help speed up the heat that's involved in processing the breaking down of everything that's in your compost. And this goes for any sugar, white sugar, powdered sugar, brown sugar. I would say even molasses, definitely raw sugar. Honey is a big yes along that line, but I say don't put honey in your compost, not because there's anything wrong with putting honey in compost, just because this shit's expensive. Just eat it. Don't waste it on composting, okay? Like, honey is, I would say, yes, you can, because honey is, a naturally occurring substance. Has a lot of sugar in it. Well, not a lot of sugar in it, but it is a sweetener, and it, it's the only food, only organic substance that won't rot eventually. I mean, we've uncovered honey from Egyptian tombs. It's pretty cool stuff. It's also expensive. I mean, compost it if you have to, but, there are much better uses for honey. It's good stuff. Don't waste it. Let's see. Hydrogen peroxide. Do I even have to say no on this? No. Along the same lines as the isopropyl alcohol, just no chemicals. Just avoid basic household chemicals, cleaners, anything like this. Peroxide is a debriding agent, which means it will, if there's dirt or anything, it's good for cleaning out scrapes, but it can eat away at good stuff in your compost. So just no to household chemicals. Drinking alcohol. Those stuff are really good, by the way. Honestly, I wouldn't put a lot in, but I'm going to say yes to alcohol. Because when you think about it, it's basically water, flavorings, naturally occurring flavoring, sugar that's been allowed to ferment. So I'm going to say yes on alcohol, but you don't want to put too much in because you don't want to throw off pH balances. You don't want to get anything funky going on in there. But, if you're going to throw some out, stick it in the composter. That's fine. And while we're talking about pH, I'm going to talk about two things, I'll find it here, that you might want to be careful about, because you're working with a big pot of stuff here. A bunch of different things are going to go in. So you're like, oh, well, how could it really affect the pH level of the compost with so much stuff in there? It can, and some people say it's not a big deal, but it can cause problems. I say it's kind of a big deal, and you don't want to go down that road, because you don't want too acidic. You want this to be sort of a generalized compost for just whatever plants you're planting that can have varied levels of tolerance to pH in soil, acidity and alkalinity. I should be saying acidity instead of pH. I'm sorry about that. But I personally would say try not to put too much of anything too acidic in there, which brings us to citrus and tea bags, also coffee. Now, a little bit can go a long way. Some people say that it's okay to put citrus peels in. I found out that it is not really, that it can slow down the process by which decomposition happens within your mixture. So I'm going to say no on citrus. Now, tea bags and coffee grounds, I'm going to say yes, but only a small amount. Like if you have tea every day like I do, you don't want to just dump every You don't want to dump every day's tea bags or coffee grounds into your compost because it will just go off the charts in acidity. Too much. But if you want to do it here and there, that's fine. It can help balance out the acidity levels. That's perfectly fine. But just in moderation. And you don't even have to dump it out. The tea bags, you don't really have to dump out. The strings are cotton. I would take off the little tags because those are a type of cardboard that you can't recycle. We'll get to that next. But the coffee filters, the tea bags themselves, it's okay to go in. Strings, okay to go in because there again, it's like it's just a plain cotton string. When we talked about fabric, good to go. Just use moderation. And then getting into cardboards and paper products, we're going to talk about paper towels and paper towel rolls, toilet paper, and toilet paper rolls. Provided that these are all, especially, we're going to start with rolls. Provided that your rolls are raw cardboard, like these are, they're fine to go in. In fact, I use these as a great source of browns for my composting on a regular basis. I tend to collect them and pull them apart and cut them up into little pieces. Paper towels, also good. I wouldn't waste them by putting them in there, but if you say you clean up a water spill and there's no grease or anything weird in the water or on the floor that you cleaned up, go ahead and toss it in. It's all good. Just use caution when you're, if you're cleaning something that you don't know about, use caution. Let's see. Plastic and metal. Come on. You know these don't go in there. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by even asking this question. You know they don't go in there. But with that, there is definitely a reminder to take the plastic stickers off your bananas or any other fruit that you would put in. Those don't belong in compost. And believe me, I have done it. Well, while I have these out, we might as well talk about bananas. Bananas. Fully yes. If you remember our fertilizer episode, bananas are just like gold to anything gardening. Yes, on bananas. Bananas on the inside, the actual banana peels, all good. Just perfect, wonderful gardening. These things are just like the best. Salad dressing. Big no. Nothing with salad dressing on it. If you have a salad and you don't finish it, just throw it away. Throw away the lettuce. We do not want oil in our compost for the same reason we don't want meat. We don't want dairy. No. Let's see. Gravy. Meat product. No. Soy milk. I have no idea. I wouldn't probably put it in. I mean, it's non-dairy, but it's. I honestly have no idea on this one. This is a weird one. I would say no. I wouldn't want to risk it just because I have no idea. And the same goes for fiber supplement powder. Now, fiber supplement powder is mostly made of psyllium husks, which is a naturally occurring thing, so you would think you would be able to put it in, but there are other ingredients that are, I just found it, where is it? Maltodextrin, citric acid, silica, aspartame. I'm going to say no on this too. If it was just the psyllium husks, that would be one thing, but there's a lot of preservatives, citric acid, I don't know. Probably not. I'm going to say probably not. All right. Let's see. Leftovers. That's always fun. Leftover spaghetti in the fridge. 2 questions. How much salt did you use when you cooked it? Did you cook it with olive oil? If the answers are lots and yes, throw it out. If the answers are not very much or I didn't use any, and no, compost it. Go for it. Dry spaghetti especially, if you have dry spaghetti that goes bad or it got sat out and it's, I don't know how you can tell if dry spaghetti's stale, but if you don't want to take the chance on cooking it, go ahead and stick it in the compost. It's fine. Homemade tartar sauce. That still smells good. Big no, because it's made with mayo. Mayo is eggs and oil. Two things we've already discussed are not going to go in. No on that. What's this? Old tomato sauce. No. I get a bad feeling from this. Normally you would think, well, tomatoes would go in, onions would go in. There's a lot of oil in that. There were meatballs cooked in it. Big no. If you don't know, err on the side of caution and don't put it in. That's usually my rule. Also, I held off cleaning out my fridge for like 3 months so I would have enough random crap that I could put on this episode. At least that's what I'm telling myself. Alright. Nuts. Various tree nuts, or we can include peanuts in this even though they aren't nuts, they're legumes. Whatever. Speaking of legumes, chickpeas. Yes to both. I would say if you have dry roasted nuts that have a lot of salt on them, maybe not, but if it's just any kind of raw nut used for baking, definitely stick them in. Chickpeas, definitely. Hummus, maybe. It depends on what recipe you use. If there's a lot of oil in it, no. Raw chickpeas, definitely. Let's see. Peanut butter. Maybe. This is a maybe. If it's something like a regular Skippy or Jif or one of those El Cheapo peanut butters that, you know, is mostly preservatives and not peanuts, definitely not. But if it's something like the last of a well, there's a lot of oil in it, so I'm going to say no anyway to peanut butter because of the amount of oil that's in it, even if it is just full of preservatives. Raw peanuts themselves, definitely yes, like I just said. Bread. Now this is some particularly good rye bread that I eat every morning because it is delicious. Yes, on bread. Depending on what type of bread and what you've done with it. If you have some old stale bread, I mean, don't feed the birds with it because that can add to a bird obesity epidemic that we're currently having in the country. Which I sound like I sound like an idiot saying that, but it can affect their diet significantly. So as long as it's not like, I don't know, already been buttered. If it's plain bread, if it's stale, if you can't do anything else with it and it's hard, yeah, stick it in your compost. It's fine. Especially something like this because it doesn't have a lot of it doesn't really have any preservatives in it. If you're eating like super preservative-y Wonder Bread, white bread, maybe take a second, you know. But for the most part, no, it's fine. Chocolate. No. Salt and pepper. You know what? I'm going to say yes to pepper. I'm going to say no, but I don't know. Flour or other spices. Well, not spices, but flour, cornmeal, masa, anything like that. I would say in small doses, yeah, why not? I wouldn't put a lot in there, but yeah, it shouldn't cause any problems with it. Panko. I don't know why I put this out, but this goes with the bread, so yes. Alright. seeds. I did not get my seeds out, but seeds are also a divided kind of thing. Some people say yes, that it's okay to put seeds in your compost because if you make it right, the seeds will break down just like everything else. Some people say no, it's not. I tend not to put seeds in my compost just because I've had so many bizarre misses with, as you saw in my old system, that I'm not at the point where I can take chances, basically, which is why I keep saying err on the side of caution. Then that brings us to another interesting question, the question of moldy foods. Now, you can't really tell what this is on camera, but this is a bunch of ginger that I dried and myself at home, and it did not dry completely, or I got some liquid in there and it molded. Moldy ginger. I know you can't see it, it's okay. Again, I err on the side of caution and say no. Some people say, yeah, it's fine. Like the seeds, if it's just yet another form of bacteria that can aid in breaking down everything that's in there. Use your own judgment. And as you can see in front of me, random scraps from gardens and old dead plants, roots, stems, leaves. Always a big yes. Anything like this, always good to put in. Whoop. Ah. And then, yeah. So there you have it. There's a nice once over of what you can do and what you can't do. Now, all the stuff that you can't do, I'm just going to go ahead and put away, like the dairy that desperately needs to go in the fridge. And when we come back, we're going to play another game called Greens versus Browns. Alright, we are back with our Greens versus Browns board. Yay! That's Packers versus... Where do the Browns even play? Is he still in Cleveland? I don't know, whatever. So, we're going to go ahead and get started in greens versus browns. Now, greens, of course, are things that, like this spinach, that if you leave it in your fridge for a while, look at that lovely sludge, it's going to break down into mush. Browns are things, like these onion skins and garlic skins that have been sitting in my fridge for 3 months, that will just kind of get dry and crack up. So it's important to have a good marriage of greens versus browns to get the right texture. You don't want it too soupy, you don't want it too dry. You want everything to break down into a nice sort of slightly damp mud, basically. So we're going to see what are the greens and what are the browns, and then we'll go from there. Let's see. Eggshells. Browns. Just make sure you chop them up really small. I didn't think this through before I did it. I'm also not right-handed, so this is fun. Eggshells! Alright. Get the easy ones out of the way first. Dried leaves. They've been sitting out in my yards for about 4 months now, 5 months. Do they crack up? Yep. Browns. And the stems, also fun to put in. Just make sure that you break them down. Nobody can read that. Old cherry tomatoes. Definitely greens. And I have the evidence of that right here. I found this in the back of my fridge. Yeah. Well, that wasn't any better, was it? Okay. Asparagus stems. These are from a few weeks ago. As you can see, they're getting pretty dry. Asparagus is actually very fibrous inside. It's sort of like a rhinoceros horn, or something like that. It's basically like, well, it's like taking a clump of hair and compressing it. I don't know if you can see, but these little ridges in there, it's drying out to its fibrous components. So this is a little bit of an interesting mixture. I'm going to say brown. Stems. Now if it was the tops of the asparagus, green. And I wrote it with the wrong pen. This is not my best idea. Alright. As we said, garlic and onion skins. Browns. I don't know if you keep up with my social media. You should. But I repotted all my aloe. So these are old aloe tines and things that are dying off. Surprisingly, brown. Some of these are very old, and they just kind of dry up once all the goop is gone. Brown. Oh, back to our bananas. Always greens. These, you don't want to see old bananas. I have forgotten bananas in my fridge. They're pretty horrible. Yeah, greens. And remember, you can do, the peels, also greens. They get very mushy. Let's see. We don't even have to answer this. Old spinach from the fridge, greens. Oh, I wrote greens instead of spinach. Let's see. Paper towels and toilet paper, also rolls, browns. Wrong pen. With a late entrant into the can I compost it? Cats. No, you can't compost cats. But you can compost cat fur. In your right works. Yes. And that would be a brown. Would go. No composting your kitties. You do perfect. Okay, sorry, buddy. Let's see. Pepper is a brown. Pretty much anything. Oh, onion. Ew. I gotta throw this out. Old onion. Yes, Wiggy. It's green. Onion skin. It's brown. Ugh. That smelled when I picked it up. Lettuce. Well, you can guess. It's green. Carrots. Despite the fact that these are old and are starting to all grow roots, and we'll get to that on the next episode, greens. Old celery. Can you see the mush? Greens. Oh, we forgot. Old plants, some of which have been sitting outside for months. Mostly browns, the roots browns, the leaves greens, and just like anything else, you want to make sure, oh, sticks that I found outside, definitely browns. And with all of these, you want to make sure that you chop them up very small. You don't, it'll take this forever to break down. So you want to make sure you just kind of, it's not breaking, Just break it into small pieces, as much as you can. Shave it off, or keep it and burn it and use it for wood ash for your fertilizer. That works too. In fact, that might actually be a better use for these. So, that's about all for greens and browns, and that's about all for composting. Composting 101 at least. So, actually one other thing I do need to mention. Your greens and your browns, and this is something that a lot of composters also disagree with. There is no hard and fast rule. It's sort of try it out and see how it works. Personally, for me, I like about 2/3 to 1/3 ratio of green to brown. 2/3 green to 1/3 brown. I find that it makes a better mixture, but that's just me. People go up to about a half. I wouldn't do more browns than greens though, because you don't want dry compost. So you could do half and half, or you could do some version of that. Just see what works for you. Like I said, I like the 2/3 to 1/3, but I also see how 1-to-1 ratio would work well too. It all depends on what you're putting in. So yeah, that's about it. We follow these simple rules that are not really that simple, considering I had a whole bunch of crap that we had to go through to figure out what the rules are. But yeah, I mean, I guess when you break it down, there are only a few simple rules to it, and you come up with some beautiful black, full of nutrients compost. And like I said, chop up your eggshells, because they are still in here. This is like 2 years old and I'm spilling it on my table. That's fantastic. This is actually even a little dry. It could be a little bit moister, but this is actually taken from the old garbage can that I had, and I stuck it in a cat litter container about a year ago, and I kind of just left it in there and didn't touch it, and it could use some more greens in it. It's a little drier than it should be, but it's packed full of nutrients, and it's good to use on my garden when I start it in a couple months. So this is what you're aiming for. If you have a lot of kitchen scraps and you feel guilty about throwing them out, you could do worse than make some nice compost and use it to grow even more things that you're going to eventually throw out because you don't need them. No, that's not good. That's not good. Anyway, so that's about all for Composting 101. And in the future, I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take, because this episode was supposed to happen in December and it's the middle of March. So we're going to do some more episodes on different forms of composting, a little bit more advanced composting. But this should be just about enough to get you started on your own journey into making some pretty good stuff for your garden. So we'll see you next time on Flora Magoria. Thank you for joining us, and happy planting, everyone.